Most people think being noticed is a reward, but for some, it feels like a threat. Psychology shows this isn't just shyness. It is a specific defense called visibility anxiety. You might find yourself sitting in the back of a meeting, hoping the speaker never looks your way. In this state, your brain treats a simple glance from a stranger like a predator watching its prey. This survival response forces you to spend all your energy trying to blend into the furniture. While hiding makes you feel safe, it often leaves you feeling completely forgotten by everyone else. Clinical research suggests this behavior often stems from a deep, subconscious need for social control. By staying invisible, you ensure that no one has the chance to judge or reject the real you. This creates a painful paradox where your greatest safety eventually becomes your biggest prison. You avoid the spotlight to escape pain, but you also miss out on the warmth of being known. Understanding this pattern starts with recognizing that your silence is actually a very loud signal. Think about the last time a coworker gave you a compliment in front of a group. If your first instinct was to shrink or deflect, you are likely managing a heavy hidden cost. Let's look at why being seen feels so dangerous and how to finally step into the light. You probably know the sharp tension that hits when a room suddenly goes quiet just as you start to speak. While most people crave the spotlight as a reward, for the attention-averse, it feels more like a heat lamp. Psychology shows this is triggered by the amygdala, the brain's alarm system that identifies threats in your environment. When eyes turn toward you, this primitive circuit can misinterpret a simple gaze as the focus of a hunt. Cognitive psychology calls this visibility anxiety, where your brain treats social praise like dangerous physical exposure. Imagine your boss gives you a glowing shout-out in a meeting, but instead of pride, you feel your heart race. You aren't necessarily worried about failing. You're simply overwhelmed by the weight of being witnessed. In this mindset, the sidelines become your only zone of true control and emotional safety. The hidden cost is that you spend more energy hiding your excellence than you do actually achieving it. This creates a painful paradox where your best work actually makes you feel more vulnerable and less safe. Over time, you might find yourself shrinking your life just to stay within the boundaries of your comfort zone. Eventually, the protection of the sidelines turns into a prison built out of your own defense mechanisms. Your brain begins actively scanning the room for eyes, leaving you in a constant state of hypervigilance. This leads to a deep exhaustion because you are essentially always on, even when you are alone. While staying in the background looks easy, it actually requires a staggering amount of mental energy. Psychology calls this state hypervigilance, where your brain stays on high alert for social threats. Instead of relaxing, you are constantly reading the room to anticipate where the focus might land. You are basically building a mental map of every person's attention and current mood. Imagine sitting in a meeting and tracking exactly when the boss might ask for a volunteer. You might carefully time your bathroom break just to avoid an upcoming round of introductions. Every move you make is calculated to keep your presence as neutral as possible. This constant monitoring uses up the same brain power you need for actual work or conversation. It is like running a heavy background app on your phone that kills the battery twice as fast. You aren't just being quiet, you are actively working to remain invisible to those around you. The result is a profound sense of social exhaustion that hits long before the event ends. You might find yourself needing hours of isolation just to recover from a simple dinner party. Because you spent the whole night on guard, you never actually got to enjoy the people there. This hypervigilance keeps you safe from being noticed, but it also keeps you from being known. You become a master at observing others while remaining a complete mystery to everyone else. Over time, this habit of watching rather than participating can make you feel like a ghost in your own life. If you recognize this feeling, the shield you built for safety has likely become a cage. When the shield is not enough, you might find yourself needing even more active ways to deflect praise. Avoiding attention is rarely about sitting still. It is an active performance of staying hidden. In your daily life, you might rely on a subconscious tactic called the compliment reflex. This is a habit where you instantly redirect any incoming praise towards someone else. Psychology shows that for some, a simple compliment feels like a spotlight that burns the skin. Imagine a coworker tells you that you did an incredible job on a difficult project. Instead of saying thank you, you immediately mention how much your teammate helped out. You might even point out a tiny mistake you made just to balance the positive feedback. This isn't just about being humble, it is a desperate attempt to dissolve social tension. By shifting the focus, you regain control over how much of you is actually seen. Psychology calls this attributional bias, where you credit success to factors outside of yourself. You convince yourself that luck or external timing are the only reasons you succeeded. The long-term cost of this habit is that you slowly erase your own presence. If you never let people see your value, they eventually stop looking for it. You create a painful cycle where you feel lonely, even while you push people away. Your deflection works so well that you become a ghost in your own success story. You might end up wondering why nobody notices the incredible work you are doing. But in reality, you have trained everyone to look the other way for your own comfort. This constant deflection becomes a wall that blocks both connection and professional growth. The greatest danger of staying invisible is that eventually, the world simply stops looking for you. Psychology shows that we rely on social signals to recognize value and competence in others. When you consistently deflect attention, you inadvertently signal that you have nothing to contribute. You might work twice as hard as your peers, yet watch them get the promotions you earned. In the workplace, psychologists call this cycle professional erasure. It happens because you have effectively trained your colleagues to overlook your presence entirely. You become a ghost in your own life, doing the work but never receiving the credit. Over time, this creates a deep resentment toward the very people you try to please. This social friction occurs when your inner desire to be known clashes with your habit of hiding. You may feel lonely even when standing in a room full of people who know your name. Genuine connection requires the vulnerability of letting yourself be seen as an individual. Think about the last time you used a joke to deflect a personal question. While that joke keeps you safe, it also pushes away the intimacy you actually crave. Cognitive psychology suggests we do this to keep our social environment predictable and controlled. You are choosing the safety of being ignored over the perceived danger of being misunderstood. But the cost of that safety is a life that feels like it belongs to a stranger. It is a heavy price to pay for a defense mechanism that was built to protect you. To stop paying that price, we have to look back at where this protective shell first began. For a long time, you might have written off your need to hide as just a personality quirk. In reality, psychology shows this is often a deeply ingrained protective adaptation. This usually starts when a child's brain learns that being noticed is actually dangerous. Imagine growing up with a parent who is very volatile or easily overwhelmed. In that house, staying small and silent was the only way to avoid conflict. Psychology calls this the invisible child syndrome within a family system. You essentially learn that your presence mattered less than maintaining the peace. This creates a mental blueprint where any spotlight feels like a looming threat. Now, even a simple compliment can trigger that same old feeling of exposure. You feel like you've been targeted rather than being genuinely celebrated. This is just your nervous system trying to protect the child who needed to hide. That strategy worked perfectly back then, but it is holding you back today. The price of this safety is a life spent watching everyone else from the edges. You end up muting your own colors just so you never clash with anyone else. Understanding this origin is the first step toward finally lowering your defenses. It helps you realize that you are finally safe enough to be seen by the world. By acknowledging the shell, you can decide when it's okay to step out of it. This shift changes how you relate to the world and how you relate to yourself. For a long time, you might have felt that being invisible was your only real protection. However, staying hidden also keeps the world from seeing what you truly have to offer. Psychology suggests a path forward called titrated exposure, which is just a fancy way of saying small steps. It means slowly letting yourself be seen in tiny doses that don't feel overwhelming. This might start with simply accepting a compliment instead of immediately brushing it away. When you stop deflecting praise, you allow yourself to actually exist in someone else's positive focus. Over time, You begin to realize that being noticed isn't the same thing as being attacked. The old anxiety starts to fade once the brain learns that visibility is actually safe. This practice builds self-efficacy, or the quiet confidence that you can handle being the center of attention. You learn how to stand your ground without feeling like you've lost your sense of self. Eventually, you'll be able to share an idea in a meeting without that crushing sense of panic. Visibility stops being a danger to avoid and becomes a tool you can use to grow. It takes real work to drop the defenses that have kept you company for so long. Remember, the goal isn't to become the loudest or most aggressive person in the room. It's simply about having the freedom to choose when you want to step into the light. When you own your space, you no longer feel the need to apologize for being there. Ultimately, the truth is that you deserve to be seen and valued just as much as anyone else.